And welcome to another Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. This is the show devoted to St. Mary's University and our athletic programs. I'm Dean Beckman, joined once again by my co-host, Donnie Netto. Donnie's the Sports Information Director for St. Mary's. We also have on this week's program, Zach Mayo, Assistant Professor of Business at St. Mary's. And we're going to talk to Zach about ESPN and the X Games Student Worker Program that St. Mary's students have been able to participate in. And Donnie, I think it's a good blend of where athletics meet academics, right?
Absolutely. We always talk about the student athlete and how student does come first. And in the second segment, we'll bring on Alec Ruud, one of our student athletes. He's a tennis player, a webcaster for you and I, and also a very good student who was able to take advantage of this student worker program. And so it's going to be fun to have Professor Mayo now to talk a little bit about that program and really just about, you know, some of the things that our students are doing as they try to prepare themselves for careers in the sports industry.
Yep, absolutely. And so Zach, before we get to that and talking about the X Games and ESPN, a little bit more about you. You're from out east, so tell us about where you're from and how you ended up getting into academics.
Sure thing. So first of all, I want to say thank you so much for having me on the show today. I'm happy to be here. A little bit about myself. Well, I'm originally from the East Coast, as you've mentioned. Born and raised in Connecticut, not far from Boston, actually, and so I'm happy with this past weekend's results, right?
So was my son. You two would get along quite well.
So very happy with those results. Anyway, I attended school in Vermont. All right, I went to Castleton University and did my undergraduate at Castleton University. That was where I first started becoming introduced into extreme and action sports. As a student, when I was at Castleton, I was required to do service learning hours, and one of the mountains next to where the school was Killington Mountain. And the Mountain Dew Tour was hosted there, and so I had an opportunity to work for the Mountain Dew Tour for a little while, and absolutely loved it. It was an amazing time, and so I was the Alec Ruud of Castleton at that point, right? From there, I became familiar and introduced to individuals within the industry, and was very happy with those introductions. Fast forward a few years later, I started to get the itch to come back into academics after I had finished my graduate degree, and I was working in industry for a little bit, and a position came available here at St. Mary's. Very happy to be here at St. Mary's now and to also start a student program similar to the one that I was in back at Castleton. Now, this is with ESPN X Games, though. The Mountain Dew Tour is a competitor of the X Games, of who I had actual experience with in working the programs. But the X Games really is top dog. They are the Nike of action sports.
I mean, it has really become a huge sporting event. I mean, it's widely known, it's widely viewed, and ESPN devotes several weeks to coverage of it, right? And actually every year, about a month of coverage or more.
Because you'll have the Winter Games held in Aspen, Colorado. You have the Summer Games that are currently in Minneapolis. You also have games in Norway, in Sydney, Australia. X Games just released news that they're opening up in China as well, so they are very much so all over the map.
And so our students started to get involved this past summer with the Minneapolis program, and now in Aspen, Colorado with the Winter X Games. It's all part of a class that you teach, so maybe tell us about the process of getting St. Mary's students involved with ESPN and the X Games.
Sure. So taking it back from its infancy stage, I had this idea where I wanted to somewhat recreate my student experience with the Mountain Dew Tour, but do it with the X Games. Being that I'm from Connecticut and the mothership of ESPN is in Bristol, Connecticut, I had some connections with individuals who were already working with ESPN, and so I just got on the phone, right, and made a couple calls. And within just a few short weeks, we were actually able to start up a student work program. From there, I got in touch with some of their event development staff and was introduced to a current student work program that they were doing. But my involvement and a few other universities that decided to jump on board, our involvement enhanced the program quite a bit. So the way that the design of the student work program works right now, X Games within their event development department, they're able to employ students who can participate in the student work program. It's very competitive to get into the program. Each university hosts a number of many rounds of interviews. X Games is are the individuals who actually make the final decision as to who participates in the program. Once the students go through this extensive application process and are selected to participate in the student work program, students are infused with a ton of information from X Games. They get on the training calls. They become part of their staff. They really are X Games event staff. Now there's a number of sub-departments that you can work for within event development. Some students end up working with music. Some students end up working with hospitality. Some students end up working in the X-Fest. And in the case of Alec, who we will hear from in a little bit, he was working in the social media department. Yeah. And that proved to be a wonderful experience for him. And it was actually also a new experience for myself as well, because I had never had a student work in social media before. So it was a little bit of a learning process for me as well to know exactly what to expect for our students. And Alec was that person, but he did an outstanding job.
Yeah. Do they get to choose what area, or do they get assigned by the maybe the experience that they have? How does that work? Where they end up working?
Sure. So in their application, they're able to indicate based off of which job description they apply for, because we have multiple job descriptions for them to apply for. So they're able to indicate which area they would like to work in for that week of the event. Though at the same time, X Games will place the students based off of what they think their strengths are, because X Games also conducts interviews and training sessions before students are actually assigned to certain areas. Then, once we are on site, actually the X Games managers are able to move students around based off of their strengths and weaknesses, because not everyone's strengths come to full light just on a piece of paper or over a phone interview. So that's kind of how that works.
Talk a little bit about your responsibility once you, now we've got this, there was probably a dozen kids students that went. What is your responsibility in terms of, other than making sure they get to Aspen?
Sure.
I'm sure you didn't have a week of just hanging out and relaxing. What was your...
No, I did not. So in the beginning, the X Games student work program is a component of a course that we offer at St. Mary's. And this course is specifically designed around the experience that the students will gain. So a lot of my responsibilities happen well before the event even happens in developing the course, making sure that the course aligns with the proper learning objectives that they will be learning and doing, and what their responsibilities are going to be on site. And then once we plan out and book all the plane tickets and work with the travel agencies and book all of the condos or the hotel reservations, we finally arrive on site, right? While I'm there on site, my personal responsibility is to be the liaison between St. Mary's and the students. The students have their managers while they're there, and their managers are there for the actual job responsibilities that they have. Though I'm there to make sure that the students are arriving on time, making sure that they're greeting the guests in the way that they should, making sure that they're completely exhibiting what they've learned throughout their training sessions and also throughout class. So to make sure that they are applying those learned concepts in the real setting. And then if there's ever any sort of an emergency or anything, I'm there as an official representative of the school.
And I know when you interview the students initially and when they apply, you're very clear about telling the students these are long days.
Yes.
And you will be working hard. So now that you've gone through a couple of the summer in Minneapolis and the winter in Aspen, how have the students handled those long days and the fact that, hey, this is actually work and they're not there just for the fun and games of it, right?
Sure. Now, it is a lot of fun, right? And there are times where students will have breaks and they will be able to watch the games and relax a little bit. But it is very true. These are very, very, very long days. You know, these are 13, 14, 15, 16-hour days. In some departments, it's less. You know, some departments you'll have 8-hour days. But in the same sense, when you're on for 8 hours, you are on, and you have to be focused. And you know, for example, with Alec in social media, the brain capacity that he had to be on his game per se, it was nonstop for him, because for him, if he makes a mistake in a post or edits a video clip wrong, he's going to have thousands of people backlashing him all online. So you have to be very on top of your game and on point. So I am very, very clear to our students, and I also am clear to everyone that applies. This is a selective process. Not everyone will have an opportunity to be a part of this. And it's not even myself who makes the final decision. We ended up taking 17 students to Aspen, and that was a wonderful crowd of students that we had. We actually were the most represented university while being there.
That's great.
So,
that's great.
That's awesome.
And do you get feedback then from the X Games officials who are supervising the students in their work capacity? What kind of feedback do you receive?
Sure. As one of the components or assignments, I should say, of the class is that I've been able to work together with the managers where they're filling out an evaluation form on the students to make sure that the students are exhibiting those characteristics of full-time event staff that the full-time event staff should be exhibiting. And from all of the students, or for all the students, I received truly nothing but rave reviews. The managers were very, very pleased with our students and the preparation that they had and the training that they had beforehand to be ready for those types of responsibilities.
Doesn't surprise us, right?
We'll put Alec on the spot in the second segment, but I want to ask you. Dean and I know Alec from the work that he does, webcasting and whatnot with us. Talk a little bit about Alec as a student for you and what he did at the X Games.
Sure. Alec has always put his best foot forward in my classes. He was always coming to class very well prepared and ready and engaged to learn the content of that day, because I think Alec is quite career driven. He is strategically in school right now because he wants to have a career in sports, some way, shape, or form, right? And I think he's trying to still figure it out a little bit as to whether that's social media, whether that's whatever it might be. But he is very career oriented and comes prepared. One of the comments that his manager said to me was, I hope he comes back for the summer because we'd love to have him again working with us. So
there's no better feedback than that.
Doesn't get much better than that.
And that does describe Alec. Always a go-getter and somebody you can rely on. Zach, just a minute left in this segment, so real quick, I want to give you a chance to talk about your Division III baseball experience. You played baseball in college and even this past summer for the Winona Chiefs. Right?
I did. I played for the Winona Chiefs this past summer. I played. I actually started out playing Division II baseball in New Jersey. Was my first year out of high school. Had a good year there. It just wasn't the school for me.
Sure.
So I had decided to transfer, and that's when I went to Castleton University in Vermont. Had a very good time there.
You're a catcher, right?
I was. Yeah. I'm a switch hitting catcher.
Those are rare. They're valuable.
They are. Switch hitting catcher. Unfortunately, my last season I went down to a leg injury. But I still have a year of eligibility left.
Ooh, well, hey.
Talk to Coach Wayne.
Yeah, we'll talk to Coach. You can get in that new clubhouse.
Maybe I could get in the new clubhouse. But the Chiefs, this past summer, it was great playing for the Chiefs.
Yeah.
And the fun thing was that I had a few of my students that were also playing on the team. So it was Zach in the summer, it was Professor Mayo during the school year, right? So
had to differentiate.
Yes, it was fun.
Yeah, well, Zach, thanks for being on the program and getting this program started at St. Mary's University. We appreciate all you do. So
thanks so much.
All right, we'll have Alec Ruud in next to talk more about the student experience at the X Games. That's next here on HBC.
The internet just got an upgrade. 1 gig internet is being hailed as a tipping point, revolutionary, and a game changer. No, not that game. This game. The critics are going all in on 1 gig internet. Push your internet to the limit, then rake in the rewards. Get blazing fast speed up to 1 gigabit per second with Luminet Internet from HBC. Call 888-474-9995 today.
And welcome back to the Cardinals Nest here on HBC TV 25. And we just heard from Zach Mayo, the assistant business professor at St. Mary's, about the X Games and St. Mary's involvement with the ESPN X Games. And now we have one of those student athletes at St. Mary's that participated in this winter's X Games taking place out in Colorado. We have Alec Ruud on the program with us today. And Donnie, we know Alec for a lot of different reasons at St. Mary's. Alec is a sophomore business major for St. Mary's. He's on the tennis team as well. But Alec, you also had an opportunity to go and work at this year's X Games through the class that Professor Mayo runs at St. Mary's. So before we get into your experience with the X Games, why don't you tell our audience a little bit more about yourself? Tell us where you're from and how you got interested in sports specifically, and how you ended up at St. Mary's.
Yeah, no, I'm a sophomore from Hastings, Minnesota, just south of the Twin Cities area. And then, again, sports has been my passion throughout my whole life. It's just been easily, that's what I want to get into. I'm a sports management and business analytics major, try to get that kind of stat side into that. And then right when I saw this opportunity open up, I was like, I got to go for it, And like you said, Zach Mayo, he's easily become, out of any faculty member, my closest, besides you two, of course. But me and him have just bonded so well. Yesterday he sent an email out, try to get a summer internship for me, so he's done so much. But no, I couldn't pass it up. I wasn't able to do the summer X Games, which we also do as well, because of my internship last summer. But no, it was just the best experience easily of my life.
Talk a little bit about, as you headed into St. Mary's, what was it about St. Mary's that appealed to you? And was it the tennis? Was it the academics? Talk a little bit about what really kind of made you want to come to St. Mary's.
Yeah, every other school I looked at was a big university: Iowa, Kansas, Minnesota, and then I kind of talked with Coach Hellberg, the tennis coach here, and we really bonded. And then I kind of had some conversations with my parents. They're like, the connections you could get out of this. Like, as I just said, Professor Mayo just sent someone a personal email that went here that I could just click like that for a possible internship. And obviously, maybe not at a bigger school. It's not the brand recognition that you might get, but the connections you'll get. And I'm already the head sports broadcaster, and I did it my freshman year. Like, at bigger universities, it's actually people that's their actual jobs, and the experience I can get in here and how close I can get, especially with the athletic department, working with you two, and then also Brian, our athletic director. It's just been unbelievable, the opportunities I've had here.
So we heard about a lot of the different types of things that students do as part of this student worker program for the ESPN X Games. What was your role out for the Winter X Games, and tell us a little bit more about your specific duties.
Yeah, so I guess it was the first time ever they've done this. They had a social media role where I had an internship last summer. I did some social media as well, and there was only 2 spots, and there was like 40 to 50 students. I think a lot of them applied for it. Luckily, I was one of the 2 students, me, and then also a girl named Bethany. She goes to Johnson and Wales University in Providence, Rhode Island. Us 2 really got that role going, and again, we went to there. We were one-on-one with the actual content director of the whole X Games, whole ESPN deal, and I sat right by him the whole time, and it was even new for them too because they've never worked with interns like us. So we Yeah, my role was kind of to edit the video of all the jumps, just everything, basically. We kind of made a joke that all I did was press a little button every single time, but literally I had to stay focused during every live event. Everything we did, I had to edit it. And then all of the 4 platforms, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, that content that I edited was officially put onto there. So all the videos you see and even some photos are actually stuff that I edited with the content.
Before Donnie asks the next question, I just want to say that's what our director here at the Cardinals Nest, Alyssa, does to make us 3 look good. She just presses a little button.
Alec, talk a little bit about the, you talk about this editing of video and whatnot. What kind of background did you have in that heading into the X Games? And, what did you learn through this process?
Yeah, no, Bethany, the girl I worked with, like I said, her and I kind of said to each other, like, we have some experience, but, like, do we know what we're getting into? Like, this is ESPN, this is live, this is on ABC, and, like, obviously I did an internship before where I would post on social media, but I'm not too techie with the editing. So winter break beforehand, I spent time just trying to grind and try to make an impression because why not? I could possibly maybe work for these guys someday. But what I learned there was just unbelievable, like how they do stuff. Those guys do not look on their phones for a good 5 to 7 straight hours because they just have to stay nonstop. They'll stay there till 2 in the morning because it's hard work. Like, you can teach yourself that, but it's the hard work that you have to put in if you want to make that content successful.
And I think that's one of the big takeaways, right? Even though they are in an entertainment business, it is a job for them. Right? Their job is to entertain the rest of us, but it's their profession, and they have to be on point all of the time.
No, for sure.
Right?
And the main thing I remember is, like, right when the live event would start, our room, because I was inside the whole time, would just be dead silent because everyone would just be grinding on stuff. And then right when something big would happen, the place would just go nuts and, like, everyone would give their ideas and stuff. And just to be in that atmosphere, especially for ESPN, was something else.
I guess that's the advantage of being in charge of the social media. You got to be on your phone because that was part of your job.
Exactly. And that's the thing. Whenever there wasn't a live event, I would have free time to go out, maybe watch some practices, go visit other St. Mary's students while they were working. So it's not like I was just in a room the whole time. Like, there was only live events maybe 4 or 5 hours a day, and the rest of the day I could have went skiing if I wanted to, but I've never skied or snowboarded before, so I did not want the first time to be by myself in Aspen and maybe take a little fall.
Right,
so.
You don't need to see the ambulance siren.
No, not at all. Not at all.
How do you handle the intimidation factor? Because, like you said, this is ESPN, this is the X Games, and they're relying on you to do some pretty important stuff. I mean, that's got to be a little bit intimidating. How did you kind of handle that?
Well, every morning before I went to work, I gave myself a good 10-15 minutes to, like, honestly motivate myself and just tell myself, like, if you do one thing here that you're not focused on, like, they might get on you, they might think differently of you, so you got to really do 100%. I think that's what St. Mary's prepared me well for because, like, sports broadcasting, there's not one moment where I can just take off and just be silent. Like, people are listening to me. Like, you have to make a good impression, and those are the impressions I wanted to make on them. And again, they offered me next year to work for their social media team as well for the summer X Games, and hopefully next winter X Games if Professor Mayo is nice enough to give me the role again. So, but again, that's the thing. I said, this could be your future. ESPN's always been your passion and your dream, so you got to really motivate yourself and just, it's all mental. You just got to stay focused.
One of the things we heard from Zach about was the process that students have to go through in order to get the internship. I mean, these are very competitive internships, right? Or they're not internships, but student worker slots. So tell us about your experience, kind of the interview process and all of that.
Yeah, no, right before the interview process, I was a little worried because I'm just like, I should have done the Summer X Games. It maybe gave me a better chance because say if those students come back and maybe obviously they already worked the X Games, but then I just told myself, I researched like 5 hours right beforehand, right before my interview, everything. I wanted to learn more about the X Games, and then we would have an interview with, I had 2 faculty members in mind, and then that moved on to Amy Wiggins, who is kind of the director of the student involvement, and then I had a phone conversation with her for an interview, and then we kind of collaborated. It was kind of funny. She was watching, I think, the Denver Broncos game during that game. We were talking about Case Keenum. Like, that's the thing I also learned too. Like, interviews, like, you just got to be yourself. Like, half the time we talked about NFL football, and then I got the job right there. Like, everyone with the X Games that I like interviewed for with Mayo and them, like, we talked about Hastings, Minnesota, where I'm from. Like, you just got to connect with them, and that's what I learned throughout the interview process. Just be yourself, and obviously looking up stuff is important, but you also got to remember to really do your own stuff and just be out there and who you are, because that's what you're going to do while you're in the field, is just be an ordinary person.
You know, one of the things I've noticed about you, working with you in the last year and a half, is your preparedness. Whether it be, you know, a webcast that you're going to do for a men's hockey game or a soccer game, you know what's going on. You've done your homework, and you mentioned that with the video editing stuff for this. You spent Christmas break trying to get better at that. Talk a little bit about that part of your personality, because you are always prepared, and whether it be schoolwork or webcasting or the X Games, you always seem to always be doing what the little things that need to be done to make sure that you know what's going on.
Yeah, no, I'll give all that credit, excuse me, to my parents. I just think they've prepared me well, and they said, if you're going to work hard, you're going to get what you want. And that's what I do. When I announce all the hockey and soccer and basketball and volleyball, I try to get there an hour, hour and a half before the game, set up quick, get my stuff done, and then I'll be the last one out of the arena every time, because obviously I enjoy being there. I've told my parents, like, obviously I enjoyed playing sports, but working in the sports industry, like, I'm such a big Minnesota high school hockey fan. I would rather go watch a game than play. Like, I'm being serious. Last Saturday I went to Rochester to go watch Rochester Mayo and Rochester Century just play a game. I had no one I knew on the thing, but I just love sports so much, and obviously that industry is so competitive now that you have to have that experience. You have to know what you're doing. So I think preparedness is what's going to best help me in that category.
How about time management? Because as we've said, you're always webcasting. It's, you know, basically 4 nights a week for Dean and I. You've got schoolwork, and you've also got tennis. How do you juggle it all and make sure that you are successful in all of those avenues?
Yeah, I honestly thought about this a couple of days ago. I was like, maybe you should start making a schedule, but or like a planner or something. But that's honestly, whenever I'm maybe not hanging out with some people or like having conversations, like, I tell myself, what could you get done right now in your free time? If you're in between classes for 20 minutes, what could you get done? So again, that's the thing. For some reason, my head tells me, just try to get to the next thing. Even like saying applying for internships, like even applying for a random one could just get you so high and stuff. So whenever I have free time, especially even on a Saturday or Sunday morning, it's going to be hard. Maybe there's football on, but you just got to tell yourself that anything you do could get you ahead in the future for the work industry.
Now, you had brought up high school hockey, your love of that. Tell me about your relationship with your dad, because I know you go to a lot of hockey games with your dad. And how did that love of sports develop, and how have you been able to carry that on while you've been away at college?
No, I think one of the main reasons I came to St. Mary's is so my dad and I can continue that tradition. Everyone in the Hastings and St. Paul kind of area know my dad. He was a very high school hockey coach, and that's been our dream, is us two coaching together. And I thought staying at St. Mary's would give me the opportunity with that, with hockey and stuff. But no, last night we were going to go down to Rochester and watch my hometown play, but there was so much snow, and we were still going to go by it, and there was a blizzard. But no, my dad and I, every year we'll go to state high school hockey tournament together, and his love for sports really transitioned to me, and he's been the biggest influencer in my life, just telling me, like, you got to go get it if you want it. And he says he'll wait till he's 70 if it takes us two to coach together. He says, get to your job, and then maybe you can become an athletic director maybe for high school, and then we'll try to coach together. But no, he's been such a big part of my life.
Alec, we've got about a minute left here. You know, Donnie, Alec is just a sophomore. I feel like we're talking to a senior, quite frankly. But, and so maybe this is an unfair question, but what advice would you give to high school seniors who are out looking for a college right now, and just what advice would you give them about getting involved and just kind of finding themselves? Because clearly you've done that at St. Mary's.
Yeah, no, that's what I thought about my high school too. I'm going to be honest, that was my biggest worry coming to St. Mary's. I was like, are you going to get that high recognition? You want to get in the sports industry, but again, there's a video, I think, on the main St. Mary's page. It shows all the, like, Boston Bruins, Minnesota Wild, like all those, like, they did such hard work to get there, and they got involved. And that's what I think. Everything's experience now. Obviously, you want to get good grades, but first day, I think you were on the table outside in the plaza at St. Mary's, and we just connected. And then right now, I'm doing webcasting 4 days a week. Like, any little thing, any person you meet, really take advantage of it. And again, St. Mary's will prepare you well. And again, the faculty, especially Professor Mayo, will help you so far, and then you too as well in the future for what you want to do and accomplish your dreams.
All right, Alec Ruud, our sophomore business major here at St. Mary's. As you can hear, very involved, very busy. We appreciate the time today.
No, thank you.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Cardinals Nest. Thanks for watching here on HBC.